Well, happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, June the 24th in the year 2025. There are, excuse me, there are 190 days left in the year 2025, and welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with Tom. I've enjoyed telling stories all my life, whether those stories were jokes, told in speeches, written in books, written for film or television, whatever the case, to tell a good story is pretty special. In late August of this year, less than a couple of months away, and just in time for this year's college football season, the story of the integration of Southeastern Conference football, and in particular the integration of Auburn University football, will be released in a book about James Owens, the story with Owens becoming the Jackie Robinson of Southern college football. It is a moving, compelling story told by yours truly, along with news writer Sam Hayes and Gloria Owens, widow of James. We'll bring you more information as we get closer to the release date of the book. The book is titled Just Follow Me, James Owens and the Integration of Southeastern Conference Football. Let's see. I'd like to give a shout out to my good friend Pat Eddington. I hope you're doing well and that you're recovering. And so our G-List guest today is Donna Gossom-Thomas. If you recognize that name, yes, she is my sister. Donna Gossom-Thomas is an author, instructor, and editor. She holds a Bachelor of Business degree from Auburn University, a master's in creative writing from the University of Alabama, Birmingham. Her short stories have been featured in notable magazines, including PMS, Steel Toe Review, the Birmingham Arts Journal, the Birmingham News, and in the anthology Write Club, and An Unexpected Journey 2024. She's a longtime member of the Hoover's Writers Club, where she critiques and edits fellow members' work. She has written her first book. It's called A Pinch, A Dash, A Smidgen, and we will look forward to having that conversation later on in the show. Our show today, of course, is brought to you by the Best Girl Consulting Firm. Let's catch up with Best Girl.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly-Gossam, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
Best Girl continues to customize the solution that fits your needs. So let's get to the round table and talk with Barbara Wallace Edwards and Michael Walker this morning and see how everything is going. Good morning, Barbara Wallace Edwards and Michael Walker. How you doing?
Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning.
Good morning,
How are you
Barbara.
doing? Good morning.
What's going on in your world, Barbara?
Well, Tom, first I want to offer condolences to my godbrothers, Jeffrey, Wayne, and Richard Jr. Packer, after their mom who passed away over the weekend. They were neighbors of ours for over 40 years. And Mrs. Brown was one of my mom's best friends, and I consider her my godmother. So offer prayers to all of them. And I also wanted to remind our viewers to be careful in this hot weather. It's going to be another scorcher this week. The CDC is asking people to make sure that they have plenty of water and liquids to drink. Try to stay out of the sun as much as possible. Set up a buddy system and make sure we're checking on those who are elderly and those who are disabled, who may try to get outside and get stuck outside or inside and don't have proper ventilation or air conditioning system. So it's going to be another scorcher this week, and summer is here. So please be careful out there.
It skipped right over spring, didn't it?
I think so, Tom. You're right. You're right. We didn't have much of a spring. Went from winter to summer, I think.
Yeah, we pretty much do that every year now. Michael, how you doing, brother?
Doing well, TG. Doing very good this morning. It's just interesting. Over the weekend, U.S. decided to drop a bomb on Iran. It dropped several bombs. You know, we're waiting on intel now to come back to see how successful it was. Of course, the president told us that it was a rip roaring success. My words, not his, but
Yeah.
he said that their nuclear compound was obliterated and stuff. But who is still assessing that? We don't know if they totally destroyed that.
Oh, well, I read, Michael, that Iran actually moved the nuclear weapons to another site before the bombing. So I'm not sure if it had any impact at all. And you said the U.S. decided. No, the U.S. didn't decide. We had one person to make that decision, it sounds like. So, yeah, but I guess it affected all of us.
Yeah.
Well, there was something, and I didn't see it all, so I probably can't comment on it all. But there was something about he basically tipped his hand beforehand,
Right.
and so that gave them time to move everything.
Yeah.
When he said he'd make up his mind in 2 weeks.
Right, right. Okay, well, let's move this stuff now.
Yeah, before the 2 weeks get here. I don't understand. I saw another post that he made on yesterday, and it sounded like a 5-year-old ranting. I honestly don't know how people can take this man seriously. It's amazing.
I'm a big horse race fan, and all this deporting people is having a huge effect on a lot of industries, but on the horse racing industry especially, because most of the grooms and the people who take care of the horses and what they call it, the back, whatever they call that, are people from Latin America and so on and so forth. And
Right.
so that has really hurt the horse racing industry. And it's an interesting thing because there are two components to the horse racing industry: the millionaires and the billionaires who own the horses, who voted for Trump, and then the people who have to do all the work, who didn't vote for him,
Right.
who are now being deported from the country.
Right.
And so, you can't just do something because you feel like it,
Right.
because somebody told you had the power. And
Yeah, well,
so we'll see where this goes. But
I understand even the Proud Boys, who his biggest supporters are now turned against him. They said they didn't want to go to war. They didn't. It's not anything they were really wanting him to do. So they're now denouncing him as well. I understand. So it's really interesting times right
I
now.
don't think anybody wants to go to war. I mean,
No.
and let me ask a question here now. Who bombed who first? Did Israel bomb them?
That's what I think. Yes.
Yeah.
From Iran.
Yeah.
So
That's true. And supposedly it was all under I'll say the purpose to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear bomb, because it's feared that if they get one, they will use it. That's what all of this is supposed to be about. And that they had talked to them about, guys, you need to stop this production of the nuclear warhead and what have you. And
Well, but Michael,
supposedly they did.
didn't Obama have an agreement with them that they would stop, and even had a plan set up where people could go in and check to monitor to make sure they were not moving forward with their plans to develop nuclear weapons? What happened to that plan?
I don't know. I do recall that, but every time that there's a transition in the White House, whatever was being working on previously, that goes out the window and they start anew,
Okay.
which doesn't make any sense to me, and it's hard to try to keep track with everything. But that's just how we operate. The other part about this that I find interesting is hearing, and Tom, you and I mentioned this a little bit over the weekend when we were talking, is now the next concern is sleeper cells of Iranians that are in different places here in the U.S. What will that do? So now they need to kind of look at that. And Tom, you know, in the conversation we had, you mentioned that you probably want to look at those first before you did it, because you knew that would be their reaction or
Right.
the quickest way they could react, and it's just interesting how things are being done. Tom, you brought up the issue about the horse racing. I just read an article that came through before we came on about how Trump is now changing with the farmers and the deportation of immigrant workers on the farms, because now the farmers are warning that U.S. food production could be impacted by 40% or more due to the fact that the people that actually do the grunt work, if you will, on the farms are now being deported. So there's nobody to tend the crops.
The
And so
crops,
now,
the restaurants, the hotels, the construction sites,
So
just it goes on and on.
that goes back to those debate questions. Well, do you have a plan? Well, no, we don't have a plan, but we got an idea.
a concept. He said
Concept. It wasn't even an idea, right? A concept.
And so now what's funny, speaking of a concept, I guess, he's now saying that the farmers can continue to work with their immigrants as long as they assume full responsibility for their actions. In other words, so that's just like, how sometimes people are incarcerated and they get ready to come out and they got to have a job in order for the judge to release them on probation. And the person that says, okay, I will employ them, have to assume responsibility for their action because they're still on probation. So it's almost that type of thing, that he's saying, okay, you farmers, you can keep them so we can keep doing the food production, but you are responsible for any actions that they take.
Well, most of them are just here to work anyway.
Right. 90% of them, they're not going into like a crime scene to arrest these people and deport them. They're going into job sites where people are working every day. They're paying taxes. They're responsible citizens. They're contributing to society. And yet they go and pull them away from their families, their loved ones, from their jobs, from the economy.
I talked to a good friend of mine yesterday out in Los Angeles, and was asking him about the quote disturbances of last week and all the people, and he said, man, look, 95% of those people who were down there were peaceful, people who wanted to do things right and so on. He said there were about 5 or 10% of those people who were acting out and acting ugly. And they probably would not have been able to do that were it not for all the military people there and the police people.
Right.
I don't know. I just, we're in a as they say, we're in a situation here.
Was it?
Yes.
We got
you remember, Tom, there's a couple philosophies about doing business. One is ready, aim, fire, and then one is fire, then aim.
Never ready. Never ready. Just fire and aim.
We used to use that in Bell South. That's right. You're right.
Yeah. And I used to think about that one. I used to say that last one just doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand it.
And let me ask this question. So we don't want them to have nuclear weapons, but don't other countries in that region have nuclear weapons?
Yes.
That's true. Well, see, here's the other part about it. Not only do other countries have them, but you think about the most powerful countries in the world, they all have nuclear weapons.
Right.
So if I'm one of these little guys, I'm like, so you don't want me to have a nuclear weapon, but all of you, China, Russia, US, all you big boys, you have
Israel.
Yes, Israel, right. They all
but I can't have one.
Right.
Okay. All right. That that's why I would say I'd probably look at trying to figure out another way to do negotiations or something like that. It's so funny how we talk about these things here, and a lot of it seemed to be knee-jerk reaction. But over the weekend, I attended a high school reunion and what have you, and I was talking to one guy, and he said, well, you have to know what you're dealing with those people over there because they are serious. They throw rocks at tanks. They believe in what they're fighting for.
Oh,
man.
and Michael, I saw some photos from your 50th high school reunion. That was great. Congratulations
Oh, you
on
did?
your 50th. Yes, I saw some.
Oh, okay.
Some of your classmates have posted some photos on social media. So
Oh, okay.
congratulations. Sounds like it was a great weekend.
Well, it was good. It was great to see a lot of people from the class. It's so interesting when you go back and you see how things have changed and people from Auburn area. Now it is bursting at the seams. And when I say that, I mean that literally. There's a new high school that was built at Auburn. And I'm telling you, if you drive up, it looks like the headquarters of a Fortune 500 corporation.
Yes.
Okay. It has 4 levels to it. It is gigantic. And it is 99% occupied. And it has only been in existence maybe 10 years. They have like almost 3,000 students there. So now Auburn is building another school on the other side of town to rival that one.
Wow.
And I didn't get there in time to go through the new high school, but I went through the old high school, the one I graduated. It is now the junior high school, and it is one of the largest junior high schools in the country.
Wow.
To have that size and be a junior high school. And when we were doing the tour of the old high school, I said to the guide, I said, well, if you're building 2 high schools, you have 1 junior high. It seemed to me you got to get another one because this is not going to be a feeder school for both. And
Right.
she said, that's a very good question that you asked. And we do have plans to build another junior high at this time. And then this is the other thing she said. She said, I don't expect the athletic competition to dwindle as a result of this. She said, we have enough of a population that we're now at Auburn High, kids that are second and third strings could go to another school and be starters there. So we won't have a problem with having 2 competing schools. And this is the last I leave with you. I thought it was funny because the name came up because, Auburn University, the Tigers, Auburn High, of course, were the Tigers and what have you. And so Auburn High School is known as the Tigers. So the new high school is going to be Plains High School, which is Auburn, the loveliest village on the plains.
Right.
Be Plains High School. Okay. And their mascot would be the Eagles, like War Eagle. So,
wow.
That's what's happening there.
Interesting.
So at the reunion, did people wear name tags? Because I found if you don't have name tags,
you won't know who they are.
Well, what they did name tags, but what they did was they did photographs from our class, from our graduation class, right, and put the name on that. So when you walked in, they gave it to you. So if you have changed, people can look at your high school picture and say, you, Michael Walker.
you don't have to go up to them and look at them. Hey, man. Hey, how you doing, Bill?
Tom, at my reunion, I don't know about yours, but at mine, even though they had name tags with their high school class picture on it, I still didn't recognize some of those people. I'm sorry, that can't be the same person that's on that picture right there. It cannot be. It's totally different.
Okay. Well, let's anything else from you guys?
Want to say congratulations to the Oklahoma City Thunder. I don't know if you guys watched that game, but that was an exciting game on Sunday night.
The whole series was exciting.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was exciting. And what's his name? Halliburton said
yes.
He would do it again. He'd play again, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. And I get that. And that's what you expect him to say.
Right.
But my thought is with the ownership and the management. And what I mean by that, he's your franchise player. And yes, you didn't want to have him sit out the rest of the series because of that injury, because you knew it was done then. But at the same time, you knew the risk of playing him because Kevin Durant had done that a few years before, played on a strained calf and blew out Achilles and left for a year. So you have to weigh that and say, do we want to risk doing this? And if he blows out an Achilles, he's gone for a year, and that set us back because we're in the finals this year. Without him, we won't even sniff the finals next year.
Right.
You know,
it's interesting because they were talking yesterday in the Eastern Conference. You got 3 blowouts of ACLs. The dude with the Celtics, the guy with Milwaukee, and the Damian Lillard.
Right.
With the Celtics guy, I can't think of his name. And now this guy. So
Jason Tatum with the Celtics has a blown Achilles.
Right.
Damian Lillard with the Bucks, and now we have Halliburton with Indiana. All 3 of them have blown Achilles.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It is.
Anyway,
but I was impressed with McConnell that came in to back up Halliburton. He
needs somebody to check him, man.
But then he don't pass the ball
same way every time.
I was gonna say
come down, and then he's gonna go to the right. He's gonna get that little spot, and he's gonna turn around and shoot about 6 feet from the hoop. And they never could get in front of him. Right. You can't check him on the side of him. You got to be in front of him.
He was impressive. He did his best.
Hey, Tom, he played the game like he has to play for his size. The problem was the defense, they misjudged what he was doing.
Yeah, I think I think he was great. The defense, they didn't check him.
Right.
You know? Sometimes when a guy keeps doing that to you, you can't check him, and you know you can't check him, then you got to knock the shit out
of him. Tom, don't tell everybody that's what the real go-to game plan is.
And then say, excuse me.
Yeah, excuse me.
Okay. Well, let's go to Sean so we can move on. We can get to our G-list guest. Sean, you want to come on in here and give us a minute? Good morning.
Good morning to everyone joining in with us. My name is Shantia Jones, and this is Got a Minute. It's our last week in June, with July coming in hot on its heels. And I know we talk about sports often here on Tuesdays with Tom. And did you know that in the June of 1972, Title IX of the Education Amendments was enacted into law? Title IX prohibits federally funded educational institutions from discriminating against students or employees based on sex. As a result of Title IX, any school that receives any federal money from the elementary to university level, in short, all schools, must provide fair and equal treatment of the sexes in all areas, including athletics. Before Title IX, few opportunities existed for female athletes. In 1906, the NCAA was created to format and enforce rules in men's football, but had become the ruling body of college athletics. But it offered no athletic scholarships for women, held no championships for women's teams, and it was actually designed to correct those imbalances. Many thanks to Title IX. Thank you all for joining in. My name is Shantia Jones, and this is Got a Minute.
Just before we move on to the G list, there was a thing on the other day. There was a women's football game, and it was a full football game with pads and the whole bit, and it was all women. Really? I didn't know they got a women's football league.
Where did you see this, Tom?
It was on one of the channels here. We were just going through the channel, Joyce and I, and we saw, and many of them you couldn't tell they were women because they were full pads and so on and so forth. And it was interesting. I forget who the teams were, but I didn't know they had a women's football league
either. That's interesting. That is interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard of that. That would be an interesting watch, I would say.
Right.
I think I probably prefer watching the women's softball games though.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, the offensive line, I guess, uh, didn't wasn't nearly as big as the male offensive lineman, but
Right.
the one team had a quarterback. Man, she could throw, and the receivers could catch it, and it was interesting. I didn't know they had that.
I didn't know that either. I had to look that up. That's
Yeah, I
interesting.
knew they had one that was called the Legends League, and it was an all women's flag football
Yeah, I know
game.
about flag football.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've
it's
seen
flag,
flags, but
and they
no.
Right.
played in lingerie, is what they did. So uh, I remember that one, but I didn't know this one, man, where they all decked out in
Yeah,
pads and
yeah,
helmets.
tackling each other. I mean, the whole bit, man. It was
Wow.
interesting. So anyway, let's move on. Hollywood's got the A list, and here on Tuesdays with Tom, we have the G list. And our G list guest today is Donna Gossom-Thomas. Donna Gossom-Thomas is an author, an instructor, and editor. She holds a Bachelor of Business degree from Auburn University and a Master's in Creative Writing from the University of Alabama in Birmingham. Her short stories have been featured in notable magazines. I mentioned those earlier. She's a longtime member of the Hoover's Writers Club. And the title of her new book is called A Pinch, a Dash, and a Smidgen. It's a book of short stories, and she's here to tell us about it this morning. So let's welcome her to the show. Good morning, Donna. How are you?
We didn't hear you.
Still can't hear.
We've had trouble this morning with the computer system, so let's see if she's actually here. Good morning. She's on here twice.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
We see you
Thank you.
double too. There you go.
Can you
All
see
right.
me and hear me? Finally.
Yes.
We see you and hear you. How are you this morning?
All right. I'm doing great. Doing great.
All right. Well, Barbara and Michael are going to ask you some questions, and you can tell us about your book, which I've been reading. It's a good read. So let's start with Barbara. Barbara, what you got?
Good morning, Donna. Thank you so much for
Good morning.
joining us.
Good morning, Barbara.
I had an opportunity to read a short story you had in Still Review about getting your driver's license, and it had me on the edge of my seat. I felt like I was right there in that car with you. You want to talk about that and how did you develop your style for writing? It was fascinating.
Oh, thank you, Barbara. I'm glad you enjoyed the story. I've always wanted to be a writer, but I always felt that I needed to educate myself in the craft. So that's one reason why I went back to school to get my creative writing degree, so that I could, what I try to do in all my writings is touch the emotions. I want you to see what I see and feel what I feel. So that's part of my writing style. I want to make sure that you're right there with me in the story. That story I did write several years ago. It was kind of going through a period of my life where I had kept so much of my experiences inside. And I just felt the urge at that. I had to let that one out. That happened to me when I was 16.
Wow.
And I didn't tell it until I was in my 50s.
Wow.
So, but yeah, it's a story that I guess somewhat changed my life. It taught me how to repress feelings. So I finally got to a point where I was able to reverse that and to write that story. And I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Michael?
Good morning, Donna. How are you?
Good morning, Michael.
It's good to have you with us today. It's been a long time since I've seen you. Yeah, it's been a minute since I've seen you.
Oh, yeah. Long time.
It has. Tell me about the Write Club. I know a few people that are in a book club, and every month they have to read a book that's been assigned, and then they come together and discuss it. So in a Write Club, what do you do? Do you have to write a short story every month, or tell me how you guys operate?
The way we operate in the Ride Club, you can actually be working on a piece, a book, a short story, even poetry. You come into the class and you read a section of it, and then you go around the table and your fellow classmate critique your work. They give you advice. Well, this works for me. I really like that particular statement, but this didn't work for me. So you get that valuable insight into what your readers will feel. So it's a very good club, especially for starters. If you think you want to write, I would recommend joining some type of club like that where you can get feedback on your work. A writer needs to be able to take criticism, good and bad. So it's good to be in where you can go to some type of group or have somebody who holds you in place and say, you're better than this, or this is not your style. Don't try to be like somebody else. Be yourself. So that's kind of what Hoover Write Club did for me.
Okay.
So let me throw something out here at you. In our family, particularly on our dad's side of the family, he gave us enough material to write stories for the rest of our lives.
Exactly.
I'll tell you this, and I found this. Let me see if I got it here. Anyway, I was over our dad's house. This is after Mama had passed. And Aiken was over there, his brother. My dad had a brother. When my dad died, he was 96, and his brother died shortly before him. I think he was 94. So they had grown up together. They loved each other. It was just great. And they were telling these stories. And so I got my little recorder out and just turned it on. And my dad
was hilarious.
My dad gave me another, I write short stories as well. And I got a short story now called, my dad said, from sun up to sundown, I was looking up the ass end of a mule. I got a story called The Ass End of a Mule.
That sounds like Dad. He was so funny. He was just so funny. I can say, I'm not going to say it. I hope I can say this, but I have a funny story. I'll use the B word. I hope that's okay. But Daddy loved to go to the casino. So him and I had taken him down to Wetumpka, and something was on the interstate, it was blocked, and so we had to go to back roads. And so we turned on the navigation system. And you know how a young lady talks to you and say, turn here, turn there. And we were all on these back roads, and he said, Donna, where you going? Donna, you know where you going? I said, yeah, I know where I'm going. And then the lady came on and she was saying, turn here, turn there. He said, Donna, that bitch don't know what she's talking about. She taking us the wrong way. You just had to laugh at him. He would say the craziest thing.
Yeah, he would. Yes, he would. He was great. So you got, if you needed material,
yes,
go and sit and talk with Daddy for a little while, and you had
just sit down and talk to Daddy.
New material. Barbara, Michael, you got other questions?
Yes, and I have a comment too. It's kind of funny when you talk to people of that generation. They have a lot of wisdom and common sense, but they kind of intertwine it with a saying, so to speak, and it's so funny. My grandfather, he grew up on a farm basically, and he only finished the 3rd grade, and his mom was a teacher. So imagine that, the ironic of his mom being a teacher and he only finished the 3rd grade. But when he got older and married my grandmother and they moved to Auburn, my grandmother said, we should get us some land and kind of farm. And my grandfather looked at it and said, I wouldn't tell a mule giddy up if he sat on my lap.
They had some sayings.
They did. Funny.
Tell me, you, Donna, are researching your grandfather's life to do a piece on him. Tell me, in taking on this project, have you found anything that you said, I had no idea? Or, that's a shocker right there. Have you found something like that in your research?
Um, well, the story is actually about my great grandfather, as told through my father. He always talked about his papa. That's what he called his father, and then his grandfather. And honestly, Michael, to me, his whole story just kind of shocks me. My great grandfather, because he was an extremely wealthy man in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. And that to me was shocking because I didn't think of a Black man having that kind of wealth in the Deep South. And that's why I want to write his story, because it has always fascinated me and sometimes shocked me because, as a child growing up, all I knew about Black people is we were slaves. We were sharecroppers, we were uneducated. So to my father to tell me the story of my great grandfather and how he beat the odds always fascinated me. So that in itself, his story in itself is a shocker, I guess, to me. It may not be to some people, but to me, it was. And that's why I like to try to put it on paper.
We found out about our great grandfather when Alabama Power decided to build a canal down in the Wetumpka area, Lowndes County, whatever county that is, and so on and so forth. That's how we found out. But here's another thing where you can get more information. They have a museum down in Lowndes County, Wetumpka area. And so me and Daddy went down there one time, and we go to this museum, and we ask the lady if we could look up some information for Tom Gossom, our great grandfather. And she said, "Oh, no, you have to go to the Colored Museum. We don't have anything here about Black folks," so on and so forth.
Wow.
So, I said, "Well, look, let me just look through the stuff and see what I can find." And so she didn't want to, but she let me do it. And of course, their great granddaddy was right there. And it talked about his wealth, and it talked about how generous he and his wife were to the people in the community, and so on and so forth. And so there's a lot of information there if you want to go down there and look through it. Maybe she'll let you go through it.
I did go one time, and I did look around the museum, and then also went to the Black Museum also. Now that I didn't see the information that you were talking about, Tom. So
maybe they've
I
taken
have to
it
get
out.
with you on that. Okay.
Yeah, maybe they've taken it out. But yeah, he was in there. He and his wife. And it talked about how generous they were to people in the community. So
yeah, Dad always told us how he would build schools and churches, and he had homes for his workers to live on the property. He built small homes for them to live in. It's just a fascinating story, and I hope I can do it justice.
I think you can. Okay, Barbara, Michael, anything else?
Yeah, Donna, let's talk about your book, A Pinch, a Dash, and a Smidgen. Talk about the type of stories you have in that, and where can people purchase that book if they're interested in getting a copy?
Okay. I named the book A Pinch, a Dash, and a Smidgen because it's a combination of several short stories. A pinch, I said a pinch of yesteryears. And now those stories takes place in like the 50s and 60s. When I was a very young girl, telling my age here, but you guys know how old I am, so no big deal there. And then the second section is a dash of the times, and it talks about more modern times, like 21st century, the early 2000s, or so it has stories of young people trying to figure out their sexuality, about a young girl's visit from up north down to the south, and the things she encountered. And then the very last section, it's called A Smidgen of a Mustard Seed. And it deals with religious stories. The story of the parting of the Red Sea, the story of the young boy who they took the 12 loaves and the fish to feed thousands of people. So each section is a little different, but it basically all deals with resiliency and trying to find yourself and figure out where you fit and just trying to deal with emotions maybe you've carried over the years.
And how can
And you
people?
can find the book on Amazon and at Barnes and Nobles.
Okay.
And I would love if you read the book or decide to purchase the book and read it, I would love for you to leave a review.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Donna, I'd like to ask you this question. In reading your bio, and you talked about your writing, and you say you have a line here. You said writing is a therapeutic tool
Mm-hmm.
for unearthing deep-seated emotions.
Mm-hmm.
What type of deep-seated emotions are you unearthing, and does your writing take a certain genre?
I hope that I had to deal with some deep seated emotions that I had, and writing things down helped me to face them, to share them, and hoping that maybe somebody else who maybe had felt that same way could learn from my experience or could identify and say, yeah, that happened to me, or that happened to a friend of mine. I think when you write, when you get things out of you, I think you have to get it outside. You don't have to share it with anybody. You can stick it in a drawer. But I think you have to get it outside in order to deal with it. In one of my stories, I said, I became friends with repression. And so I think writing helped me to unearth that and to get it out and to become the person that I'm very much capable of being. I like to write, again, going back, I like to write just narrative type fiction, some of it creative nonfiction, I guess is what I should say. But I like to just write stories that, again, as I told Barbara earlier, that puts you in the place where I am and that I hope you can feel happiness and joy and sorrow, and you can laugh and you can cry. And those are the kind of stories I like to write. I like to really try to reach my audience and really try to open them up to all kind of emotions.
How do you, and this one is I think depends upon the individual writer,
Mm-hmm.
but do you separate the truth from fiction? Do you use real names? I mean, I recognize some of the people you didn't use
Yeah.
real names, but and sometimes I mean, you're right. I write a story, and maybe you got to say something that's not that it's not nice, but you got to tell the truth sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and so you have to determine then. Well, I generally don't use the names, but you don't want to use too much that identifies them
Mm-hmm.
as
No,
you
I
know.
try not to use people names. I really do. Sometimes I do have a hard time with that, just trying to separate it. So, okay, well, what can I name this person? My daughter actually told me I actually used her name in one of the stories, and she said, "Mom, take my name out, please." She said, "Don't put my name in there. Name me something." So I do have a problem with that. That's why I always have a checker. Check this, read this. You're familiar with this particular incident. So am I saying too much? I try not to belittle anybody or have any type of negativity towards anybody. If I do have something like that, it would be towards myself. But I hope that maybe if I start out with the character and maybe they're not as nice, in the first part. As you read on, that character starts to change, and you start to see the good in the person, because everybody has some good in them, I think. So I hope I did not offend anybody in these short stories. That was definitely not my intention, and I did change names.
Yeah, I mean, I never had anybody come
I'm
after me
sorry.
about stuff I write.
Oh,
But the book we're doing about James, I mean, that's
mhm.
truth more or less,
Yes,
and
yes.
so you,
And he's such a good person. What could you have to say that would be negative, really?
yeah.
Um,
But
he was
there's
just a good
you
human
want to
being.
you got to put it all in perspective
Yeah, yeah.
of that time.
Hmm. Hmm.
I tell you guys, I worked on the garbage truck one year. I don't know if you guys remember that, but I couldn't find a summer job. We got out of school late, and so I came. No, I was yeah. Anyway, for some reason, I couldn't find a summer job. Back then, man, you went to the newspaper and you looked up the want ads and you found jobs, or somebody in the neighborhood told you where a job was, whatever. So Donald Charles, remember Donald Charles? Donald
Hmm.
Charles told me that the city was hiring,
Hmm.
and and so if you went up there on Monday, you could get hired because everybody got paid on Friday. And if they didn't show up for work on Monday, they were fired. And so they would just hire new people. And so Don Charles and I walked up there, it's a couple of miles. We walked up there and they hired us that day. And so I loved it. They called me college boy. Our team was Stompy, Ricky, Hotshot, and Bear, and the college boy. And we would, and so you'd be riding on the back of the truck, and we were riding up by Century Plaza one day, and I was in the middle, so I had to hold on to the back of the truck because they had steps on the side where they could stand on, and cars would pass by, and you'd be looking down in there because you'd be trying to look at the women's legs and stuff. So I'm looking down in there, and I see this girl in my class at high school, and we go to this private high school, so on and so forth. So when the first day of school, first thing I did was went and found that girl. I said, "Don't you tell nobody you saw me on that girl." And she never told. She never.
Well, Tom, maybe that's why Emmett wanted to be a garbage man. When he was little, he said he wanted to hang off the back of the truck. He wanted to be a garbage man.
It wasn't bad. I enjoyed it. You went to work at 6:30 on Monday, and you worked till 1:30, and you were done. On Tuesdays and Fridays, you went at 6:30, and you were done about 9:30 in the morning. And you could go home. And so it was interesting. But the little kids at the little daycare centers would run out there and say, "Hey, Mr. Garbage Man, hey!" It was fun. Uh, any other questions for Donna?
I
Yeah.
do have another. Go ahead, Michael.
Well, I wanted to ask you, Donna, tell me what's your process in writing? And when I say that, first of all, what's your tool? Are you using old school where you get a pen and paper and you sit down and your thoughts come to you and go from your mind through your fingers onto the paper? Or do you sit in front of a computer and just hammer stuff out like a mad scientist? What do you do?
It's a combination, actually, Michael. I guess old school. I start out with pen and paper, and I just start to write. Just write. I don't try to watch my spelling or anything. I just write as things come to me. And then when I really get into it, I maybe have sometimes even just a half a page. I'm like, I'm going too slow. I got to go to the computer and type this. So I use both really, but I start out pen and paper and just let my thoughts flow. You know. And
Okay.
then I would say this too when you write, and Tom, you know, hold on, drop my piece. Sorry, dropped my earphone. Um, when I write, okay, can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. Again, as I say, I start out on a pen and paper, but every writer has a different process. I just let my thoughts come to me, and and I may write for an hour, and then I may, put it down, and I may start something else, like I get stuck. And I'm like, okay, I don't know where to go with this. I'll go with this character. So I will take a break, and I may write another story and then come back to the one, where I had the writer's block. But it is a process, and it's something I guess you have to enjoy doing because you can't get impatient with it. And sometimes it takes years, really. I can honestly say I've been working on the book for years. But the short stories seem to come to me a little quicker.
Okay.
And Don, I know that your big brother is a
Yes.
successful author and actor and all of that, and so are you. I don't know about Kim. I don't know if Kim is a writer as well, but it's just something that your parents encouraged you all to do, is to write your thoughts down, or what was it that motivated you all to be authors?
When we were little, I can remember, Tom, I'm sure you remember too. We lived over in Titusville, and we would walk to the library once a week. We'd go, and me and Tom, Kim was still a baby, and Mom always encouraged us to read. She always encouraged that. So we walk to the library, we check out a book, we go back the next week, check out another book. Tom would get 2 or 3, I'll just get one. And we would just always encourage to read. Tom was a very avid reader. I mean, he would read. I don't think I was as avid as he was. But I think the reason I got into wanting to write was simply when our daddy started to tell us all the stories. I think that's when I wanted to start writing. But always, I think Mom just encouraged us to read and to explore.
She did, and Mom was always reading. And everybody in the house read something. Daddy read the newspapers on Sunday, and so
Yes,
everybody was a reader. And we could walk to the Titusville Library from where we were living. And the first time she took me, she let me get as many books as you could get, and I was so excited, man. And then in our little school, Our Lady of Fatima, we had a library. And then so I enjoyed the library at Auburn. I've always been a big library guy, and
and not to leave my little sister out, she's a reader also.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's a reader also.
Mama was a big part of all that. Everybody she ran in there reading. Once she got everything, got the meals fixed or whatever, then she'd go back in her room and read. And she was great. So, anything else? Donna, you got anything you want to talk about that we hadn't talked about?
I would just like to, to let you guys know that you can contact me on my website at www.donnagworks.com. You can contact me with any questions you might have. You can also order the book from that site. Also, I am planning a book signing August the 9th at the Vestavia Library. You can get more information about that on my website also. And I just want to say thank you so much for having me. I'm in a different phase of my life and trying to start a new career. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
Do the website again,
www.donnagworks, WORKS.com.
Okay, that was
you can, and that's also an email address, donnagworks@gmail.com, and you can find all of this on the website.
Talking about our parents, Mama would be proud of you, huh?
Yeah.
I hope so.
I think she would.
She's extremely proud of you and of Kim, the baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's here now. She's my what can I say, Kim? She helps me with all, but she helps me with social media. See, Donna, you go here, and she knows all that, and she helped me figure out this technical issue. So
That's great.
she
Well,
she she
you had to get somebody to figure out the technical issues because
yeah.
I ain't it.
I'm not it either. So she said I'll come over in the morning. I said no, don't worry, don't worry. She knocked on my door at 7:30. So
Oh,
thank
Yeah.
you so
wow.
much,
That's
Kim.
great.
Yeah.
I woke up this morning. I got 3 problems to fix when we get off of this thing. So
Yeah.
sometimes you just wake up and there's a problem waiting for you.
Mhm. Mhm. That's true.
Anything else from Barbara, Michael, Donna?
Yes, Donna, I wanted to ask you a question. You caused me to think about something
Mhm.
that, and I'll go back to the phrase you had, uh, unseated, deep root emotions.
Mhm.
You know, in thinking about writing as being therapeutic, with a lot of our youth nowadays, they need an outlet and what have you. And, there are different programs to help people with different types of disabilities that they may have. But I was just thinking about, maybe some of our young men and young girls that are having a tough time if they got into writing and being able to express their emotions on paper. And I know they'd have to be taught the basics, but that may be a program to rehabilitate them instead of them acting out in the streets. They're putting stuff down on paper and writing it and may end up having a successful career as a writer or something else and be saved, so to speak,
Mhm. Yeah,
if
I
that's not
totally
too
agree with
grandiose.
that. I totally agree with that. When I taught school for a while, I taught English and I taught literature, but I always encourage my students to write. Write it down. Put it. I said you don't have to show it to me. You don't have to show it to anybody. Write it down and put it in the drawer. But write it down. Get it outside. Deal with it. So I think that it is definitely something that I think that helps you deal with certain situations you may be in. Get it out. I think it has to come out. So get it out
Yeah.
because if it doesn't come out, you're going to manifest it in other ways. You may turn to alcohol, you may turn to drugs. And I think once you bring it out and deal with it, you can maybe set yourself on a different path. So I definitely agree with that, Michael. Great idea, man. Something to think about.
Yeah, you may be able to get some grant money and start a program.
Yes. Great
Well,
idea.
Michael, I'll come and I'll say, Michael, would you like to contribute to my program?
No, you got to come to me and say, Michael, help me write this grant so we can make some money.
Okay, there we go. There we go.
It's a lot of fun if you get into it. I mean, it's work, but
Yeah,
it's very satisfying when you
yes, it
put
is.
something down on paper and you like it. Um,
And
so
I just want to thank Tom too for somewhat being the pioneer in the family because a lot of times me and my sister step out because we've seen you do it. And so I just like to say thank you to you
well, thank
for
you.
opening doors that we can walk through. Thank you.
And I think a lot of that goes back to Mama.
Yeah,
She
that's true.
always,
That is so true.
when I went to college, my mother would write me letters, and I would write her letters.
Hmm.
And I mean, I was only like 100 miles down the road, but it was like, you know. And then I don't even remember Aunt Clara. Aunt Clara wrote me letters when I was
Hmm.
in college,
Yeah.
and so I would write them back. And so I guess to be a writer, you have to write, and
Hmm.
it doesn't matter what you write, as long as
Exactly.
you're writing something,
Right.
especially if it's personal to you and if it means something to
Hmm.
you.
Yes. I
The
agree.
when we went on a cruise a couple of years ago, the 2 stewards, I guess that's what you call them, who took care of our little room on the ship,
Hmm.
uh, their actual names were Two, TWO, and Joe. J-O, Tu and Joe. So you know I got a story coming about Tu and Joe. And sometimes, I mean, it's like in this case, I don't even know where the story's going. I may just start writing it, and then it may figure out where it wants to go.
That's true.
But yeah, that was I told Joyce when we were on the ship. I said, well, you know, I got to write about Tu and Joe. I said, how do you spell your name? He said, T-W-O. I said, like two. He said, yeah, it's two. I said, okay, that's cool.
That's interesting.
Okay, anything else?
Thank
Donna,
you.
we enjoyed you. We wish you the best of luck. I got my copy right here. I have to get you to sign it sometime. So, and we'll go from there. So,
thank you guys so much.
Good
Thank
to see
you, Donna. Good to see you.
All right. Thank
and
you
as
so
you
much.
move through, if you have other things you want to talk about, you can let us know, and we have repeat guests. People come back. So
Great.
And we got a lot of people in the chat this morning who are commenting on what you've done, and there's even somebody on here from Pakistan.
Oh goodness!
So, who was that lady we had that time who wrote the book?
She was from Pakistan. She wrote a children's book.
Yes.
Yeah. So
okay.
It gets around. All right. Well, thank you, Donna.
All right. Thank you guys so much.
Let's give her a hand.
Bye.
See you. Bye.
Okay, so my closing comment today, or as I see it, I've got a couple. One, I want to wish my good friend Pat Eddington health. I hope she's doing better, and I wish her the best. Pat. So my closing comment today is that the University of Wisconsin is suing the University of Miami for tampering with, or what they're calling poaching, a college football player. So what has happened is, according to Yahoo Sports, the University of Wisconsin has filed a lawsuit against the University of Miami alleging the Hurricanes tampered with and eventually poached a college football player who was under contract. The player in question is former UW cornerback Xavier Lucas, who transferred to Miami in January without entering the transfer portal. The complaint was filed in state circuit court, accuses Miami of tortuous interference, while seeking unspecified damages, transparency, and accountability from Miami for allegedly interfering with a binding revenue share contract between Wisconsin and Lucas. The lawsuit states that Miami communicated with Lucas despite knowing he had entered into a contract with Wisconsin, something the school termed as, quote, intentional interference that was not justified or privileged and caused Lucas to breach his contract. Now, this is pretty incredible, but I think it's just the beginning. The situation involving Lucas and the two schools became national news in January. Lucas signed a 2-year revenue share agreement with the Badgers, Wisconsin, but because of that agreement, Wisconsin refused to enter Lucas into the transfer portal when he requested a transfer during the winter window. According to Yahoo Sports, Lucas requested a transfer after learning that his father suffered a serious life-threatening illness. He then withdrew from classes in Wisconsin and enrolled at Miami. So anyway, it says the case could set an important precedent in the way schools enforce tampering clauses within revenue sharing agreements offered to student athletes. My only comment is we'll see, because I think this is just the beginning, and I think there will be other, quote, poaching going on. So let's see. And that's our show for today. We want to thank our G-List guest, Donna Gossom-Thomas. We want to thank our sponsor, Best Girl, Thanks again to the TWT team, Barbara, Sean, Emily, Michael, and Joyce. And that's it for this June 24th in the year of 2025. Remember, a day without a smile is a day wasted. Enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe. Peace.